Hello and welcome to this France 24 interview. Our guest here today is the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan, Mr. Taro Kono. Welcome. Mr. Minister, I would like to start with the North Korea crisis. For a number of months now, North Korea has been carrying out nuclear tests, ballistic missile tests, and it seems that nothing can stop North Korea in its march towards a complete nuclear arsenal. Do you believe that it is still time to stop their forward march of North Korea towards that arsenal?
In fact, the international community, Japan, the United States, South Korea, China, and Russia hold the view that it is necessary to deprive North Korea of nuclear weapons. If the resolution of the Security Council of the United Nations is correctly implemented by each member state, 90% of North Korea's exports will be reduced and 30% of its oil supplies would also be reduced. Already, the various sanctions have started to take effect according to the information we have, and we're now going to enter into the winter period. The international community must continue to impose sanctions on North Korea, and I think we must make North Korea understand that it will not have a bright future unless it abandons nuclear weapons and missiles. And if it also clearly shows its intention to bring a solution to the problem of kidnappings of Japanese citizens, then the international community finally will be able to start a dialogue with North Korea.
This brings us to the statement made by your American counterpart, the US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. Up until now, the Americans have always stated that they will negotiate so long as the North Koreans start to dismantle their nuclear arsenal. Here, Rex Tillerson said, "We are open to negotiation with no prior conditions." It seems that the Americans are changing tack and are open to negotiate with Pyongyang now. Do you approve that change of position?
In fact, the White House has clearly asserted that US policy has remained unchanged. Therefore, nothing changes regarding the international community.
So you are opposed to immediate negotiation with the North Koreans. You're saying that you cannot open negotiations so long as they have not at least begun dismantling their arsenal.
The American government has clearly asserted that it hasn't changed its policy. Consequently, the international community, so long as North Korea hasn't clearly shown its intention of renouncing nuclear weapons and of solving the problem of Japanese citizens, dialogue just for the sake of dialogue has been a failure in the past. We don't want to repeat this mistake.
Now, you talked about the sanctions a little bit earlier. You seem to suggest that the sanctions, there have been numerous waves of sanctions, are not being applied evenly. Are you calling for more sanctions, maybe a full embargo on oil? Or is your position that some countries, such as perhaps China, are not fully applying the sanctions, and if they were applying them, that would change the situation?
In fact, currently, the international community, including China, is implementing the resolution of the Security Council quite firmly. The sanctions, even if they were introduced today, they will not have an impact immediately. For sanctions to have an impact, it takes time in any case. So until the sanctions have an impact, the international community must continue to implement sanctions relentlessly.
Are you in favor of further sanctions, for example, a full oil embargo?
I think that if that is necessary, it is possible to stiffen sanctions even more.
I would like to come back to the relations with China as regards North Korea. We talked about an upcoming summit between heads of state and government between Japan, China, and South Korea. Is this something that is going to occur soon? We know it should have happened a couple of months ago. Is it back on the agenda?
Indeed. Japan had to organize parliamentary elections, and this summit between China, South Korea, and Japan has taken time to be organized. In fact, relations between China and Japan show signs of improvement, and the relations between China and South Korea are also improving. Consequently, this summit meeting, Japan, China, and South Korea, will not be enough. It has to be effective. It has to bear fruit. And if all these preparations for the summit to be effective will take time, so this summit, we are adjusting the date. The summit will probably take place sometime next year.
Let's talk now about the climate summit in Paris. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has stated that we are losing the battle against climate change. My question, therefore, is very simple. Do you believe it is too late to save the planet? Can we still win the war, even if we are lagging behind, as the French President and many other heads of state have stated?
In fact, the question of climate change is really an issue which involves all human beings who must show that they are supportive. They are facing this problem across the whole of the world. There have already been major climate changes that have caused great damage. Many people have suffered from this damage. In this regard, it is true that we are lagging. However, for the next generations after us, it is necessary for our generation to assume its responsibilities. It's our duty to do so, and Japan must walk side by side with the rest of the world to tackle this problem.
So the problem, as we know, is the fact that the Paris Agreement, which aimed to limit climate change under a 2-degree Celsius increase, is further damaged by the withdrawal of the Trump administration. Is that a killing blow to the agreement? In other words, do you believe that despite the withdrawal of a country that is so important in climate change, the United States, we can still achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement?
It's true that the US federal government has turned its back on the Paris Agreement. However, various US states, local government authorities, American businesses have been tackling the problem very seriously and supporting the Paris Accord. Notably, American companies are actively using new technology and hold the view that the Paris Agreement concerns them in the first instance. It's not because the federal US government has turned its back on the Paris Agreement that the whole of the United States of America have turned their back on the Paris Agreement. We must be aware of that.
Let's move on now to the trade agreement between the European Union and Japan. It was signed very recently, and you may remember that one of Donald Trump's first decisions when he entered the White House was to tear up a number of free trade agreements with a number of Asian countries. For Japan, is this agreement with the European Union an important one, but is it also a message in favor of free trade and against protectionism?
In fact, the European Commission, Mrs. Cecilia Malmström, the European Commissioner, we have confirmed the finalization of negotiations. In the background of the rise in protectionism today, Japan has been able to finalize the negotiations. It is something wonderful for free trade. And this will enable Japan and the European Union to deepen their relationship. We hope that the relations between France and Japan will also be strengthened. Of course, the American withdrawal from the TPP is a mistake. It's certainly a mistake, and Japan, with the 11 remaining countries, will make every effort to implement this TPP. We are still hopeful that the United States will come back, will go back on its decision, and will sign up to the TPP.
A final question. We talked about relations with France. If my information is correct, 2018 will be the 160th anniversary of the opening of negotiations and relations between France and Japan. Therefore, there will be a quite exceptional cultural event organized in France called Japonisme 2018. There is word on the street of a visit of Emmanuel Macron to Japan in 2018. How would you describe relations between France and Japan?
In fact, we are not contenting ourselves with this initiative, this cultural initiative. France and Japan share the same values from a strategic point of view. These two countries are strong partners. Foreign trade, culture, diplomacy, security, in many areas, France and Japan wish to strengthen their relationship.
And President Macron is expected in Japan in 2018.
We would be delighted to welcome President Macron next year.
Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Thank you for answering our questions, and thank you at home for watching this France 24 interview. Stay tuned.